sorry. So yeah, we're ready to start. So I think one of the key areas in modern enterprises is how you're actually going to organize and monitor and architect your integration, and that is what I wanted to share on this this presentation. So I'll just yeah, get started. I'm not sure I'll get time to do questions, but let's see. Maybe at the end. There's a lot of things that I just wanted to cover, and I think the connection behind it makes sense. So one of the things that I've seen is that there's a lot of need for cloud, and that means that all of you guys need to figure out how do you actually want to do these different kind of things. And you want to be able to do more integration and less time. So I'd say one of the key areas that we have is integration has really high priorities, both from SAP customers, but also at the SAP keynote. So one of the things that we saw there was that was like 20 minutes that was focused on a lot of the topics regarding integration and what was going on there. And it was a 70-minute keynote, so it's like 1/3 of the thing was about integration. And there's obviously different integration on it. And SAP want to make this easy for customers to do integration, so they can make sure that everything works as expected, and it should be easier for them to get everything up and running. So we'll also stop that video. Yeah, and if they are not successful, getting all of the line of business success factors, Ariba and stuff like that, as an offering that's easy for customers to implement, it will be a lot of work for customers. And then you'll probably see that customers would go for something else if those other application serves or are easier to use. So that's the reason why SAP has a high focus on integration, as we'll see. So they talk about these 4 pillars of integration. The first one is out of the box integration, where they actually someone on the wall. Oh, so good. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so customers need to be able to really, in a fast way, integrate things and just say click and run the integration. Probably we're not there yet, and we'll probably never be, but the closer we can get to that, the better for customers. Then they're talking about open integration, making it easier for all people to integrate and interact with the SAP community, using, for instance, the API hub, where you can see all the APIs that are going into the SAP application and all those different things. Then there's the holistic integration, that from all applications it should be easier to see all the different topics that you have and what's going on there. So even though you're in one application, if it's integrated with something else, it is much the same. Yes, I agreed. It's much of this is marketing, and you can obviously take out how much is in it. But I think from a goal or that perspective, a target, it makes a lot of sense. And then they have the AI-driven integration, where with the integration content advisor are able to help customers integrate some of the tools easier, or at least in the B2B space, be able to integrate there. So actually, before talking about what everybody is doing, and I was considering a lot where I going to place these different things. But I think one of the key areas is actually to start with an understanding of what you are integrating and what is going on in your own landscape. And this was also one of the key areas and topics that were being talked about at the international focus group that I just went to. And this was actually the whole architecture, because we can obviously say we got a tool, a PI, a cloud platform integration, and they can do some things. But without really a good goal understanding about what's going on, then you are not able to do anything with it. So you want to understand what you are currently doing and what's going on there. And then obviously the big thing that all customers is considering is where in their S4 journey they are, and when that's going to happen, what the impact will be and what's going on there, or what other cloud products they will be buying. And one of the things that we talked about at the user group was a lot of the line of businesses the business would just go out and buy some application themselves, and then you have to figure out how do we actually integrate this with all our existing application, making sure it works as it is expected. And then someone had to put this into the project charter, so all architecture was being approved or needed some approval before it was actually being implemented. So one of the key recommendation, and I think a lot of customers are using this to get an understanding about what they are actually doing, is this integration solution advisor methodology. It's a methodology from SAP that contains a lot of slides. It's free, but the goal is to understand, first figure out what are all the integration requirements that you have in your organization, and then figure out what are the different patterns in those things, and then later figure out what should be done with these things. So there's some requirements about how you're going to these things. It's a free presentation. I think you can just search for ISM and then you email Matthias Algar, and then you can get access, see the presentation, and see what are the different concepts that you need to go through. So you can go through this journey yourself, and you can have some external party helping you with it. And I think that's probably one of the key areas that you need to go through this one. Depending on what kind of skills you have in an organization, it may be a good idea to get some external party to help you in this process and say, okay, what are the patterns and what is actually going out in the broader perspective? Because if you just are used to A2A application, it may be difficult understanding what all the other topic is. So I strongly encourage you to get someone else along this and check it out what's going on there. And I think also one of the things, so you get some understanding of what are the different roles in your organization and how do they actually interact with these things. And you'll probably also be able to create some kind of business case for getting the different applications that you want to run. So I'll talk a little later about some of the different iPaaS options that SAP has and what they can do. But at least then you know, okay, we got this, we can use this option and this is what it will cost. And this will be the benefit for the business doing these things. But yeah, so some customers were using this method and then were saying, okay, if we get this pattern, we use this application. If these things are true, otherwise we use some exception or something else like that. So it's really useful in the process. SAP is also working a lot of these different alignment, what you need to take away from these things. So there's these CIO guides. They are pretty long, a description of all these different visions, and as talked about earlier, some of them it's marketing, some of them is a little about what you can actually do in your organization right now. And I think they have not put in all the new things that are coming out, but just the things that you can actually implement. But even though you can implement open connectors, which I would not imagine is, I'm not sure if it is in any of the books, it's still not what you're currently implementing and figuring out what's going on there. So I think a lot of the questions that we had was the existing integration. What is it that you currently have, and what are the dependencies on those things? And obviously, you're probably a SAP PI customer and want to know what's going on in that perspective. So I created a podcast with Ute Palser on the integrationpodcast.com. Tals, could you put a link to that? Where we talked a lot about these different things. So they have 11,000 customers. There's 2 customer engagement initiative in progress, a testing tool, and a B2B tool that can be useful. The testing tool is a lot like the one I have. Though from what I've seen so far, it's a little limited in what it can do, but let's see. But it's a good thing to get some competition in the market, and customers would be able to see that testing is an important thing of what's going on. 7.5 has end of support in 2025, as I recall it. Something like that, and obviously these things could change, but the main roadmap from SAP was there was not going to be a lot of things going on in the PI system and development there, but just development on the CPI on-premise. And I think this makes a lot of sense because you got, if SAP were doing major change in the PI landscape, customers would have to do a larger migration projects on it. Then it's a lot easier to just have the CPI as a more flexible, and then you can actually use it there. And yeah, I think they're migrating. It's like 4 releases a year they have, and taking some of the cloud, new cloud development and putting them on premise so you can run it there. There'll be a new PI version in 2022 or something like that, depending on Oracle and all the database vendors and what they are thinking of. The link is for the podcast is in the chat if you want that. So the major thing that is actually going to happen there is it may not contain the ABAP, the BPM, and the BRM part. I think from the ABAP and based on the survey, there's not that many customers using the ABAP at the moment. And I would imagine when we're going to 2022-23, it's probably not going to be that many using it. So that one would probably not be upgraded. The BRM and BPM, they are considering whether or not they should be in the scope. And yeah, depending on customer requirements or some legal restrictions, they may be there. And my guess is they would probably not be able to get rid of them because there's a lot of things going on in it. But yeah, let's see. That's a long time. I guess 4 years in IT terms is 3 new, or at least 1 new paradigm. So let's see what's going on there. It will be an upgrade to the next Java release 10 or 11, depending on what Oracle says is the next go-to release. And this one should then be valid to 2030, around there. So you can run your on-premise content for quite a long time. So I'm doing something. one of the things I would expect, if you're going to use the cloud content on your PO system, you would probably end up having to upgrade a lot often than you're used to, because there's going to be continuous development and delivery of new content. So you need to figure out, how do we actually upgrade our system a little more often than once a year or once every 4 years, whatever customers is currently doing. So you want to be able to patch it. And then obviously, depending on what you found in your SAM methodology, you may want to consider, how do we actually grow to the required data volume. So some of the things that I think that you want to consider is for the on-premise integration is, I think the PI, even though you have the option of running CPI content, I think the PI has a lot of real advantages in some scenarios. And as Michael Kraftek said, he would believe that we will be doing CPI or PI for quite a long time yet, since customers are still using Business Connector, and that one has been out of maintenance for 10 years maybe. Yeah, and the PI is really powerful for simple messages handling, where you just have one message you need to deliver to one or more recipient. You can use some of the async sync patterns, some of the bridges, though I would probably probably some of them you probably want to be doing in CPI instead, because it has that platform out of the capabilities. And then obviously you want to use the CPI for pre-delivered content. For technical processes, I would also use it instead of the BM, though currently when I wanted to try it out, I had some limitations that I could not do. I could not do a wait step without putting in some custom code, and it's probably not the ideal world to do that. But I would imagine that some of these things would migrate here, so making it a little easier to do. The thing that it is obviously missing is the user action, and how do you actually handle those things in a good way. So there you probably want to have a BPM process in place, or if you can use the cloud platform, you probably want to use that one. I think, Danny, one of the things SAP was talking about was maybe an option to migrate PO to CPI, but probably just on a message flow basis and some of the simple processing. I can see some of it would be fairly simple to do, but it's probably a difficult thing to figure out what's actually going to happen in that perspective. But I think that you definitely see it in a lot of places. I think one of the things, if you're on a dual stack, and obviously it gives some challenges, so I think it would be a good idea to get to a single stack, to the 7.5 release, because there it will be a lot easier to run things, and since you don't have the ABAP stack and all the dependencies there, it's a lot easier to go around and figure out what's actually happening there. So one of the things that I think is important there is you probably also want to consider a CBurger migration, and how you can actually migrate from CBurger to a B2B add-on. And I have some resources here where you can use the tool to migrate the CBurger mappings, or some of the guides for doing this. So check these blogs out. And if you're looking more for the CBurger, there will also be a podcast coming up one of the next days, where I'll share a little about where I have an interview with an organization that have done a CBurger migration, and sharing some of their ideas about what's going on. So look forward to that one if you're using CBurger. So check that out on integrationpodcast.com. I was talking with one customer about, well, we are on a fairly recent release of 7.31 or 7.4. Do we want to upgrade to 7.5? And I was just looking, well, some of the big things that has been changed is the BPM or BIM. If you're not going to use that, and obviously there's some minor changes, some extra adapter engine, but I'm not really quite sure what the difference is between the two things. But as I see it, there's probably not going to be that big of a difference between these two things. Yeah, for the moment, if you don't want to run the CPI content on premise, maybe you can skip the upgrade and just do SP upgrades. But on the other hand, if you're on a single stack, as I understand it, should be a fairly simple upgrade. It's not going to be the expensive upgrade. And I would imagine that the Java 8 will give some performance benefits. And at least you'll get the new functionalities, their testing tool, and the iFlow editor. That's probably also one of the things that you have, so you can use that one. And I think, no, that was also backported. So yeah, the iFlow editor is probably the big one. I think so. The B2B add-on, I think, I'm not sure what they will, if they the development they will be doing on this release will on this CPI customer engagement initiative will be delivered to 7.4 or not, and I don't know what they are. So no idea, but that may be some of the things that's missing. BPM or PRM, as I said, probably continue run the existing one until either the cloud becomes what you want to do, or use, if it's just technical, then use the CPI for that one. I can see Holger was with it. He created a short release of short response of the International Focus Group survey. You can see that on the link below, or just go to the blogs.sap.com site and see in the PI space. So actually, I think one of the interesting approaches here is that you got like 50% that are not planning an upgrade, but then the rest is planning an upgrade. So that's actually quite a large number of upgrades. And I guess this was within the next year from summer. So I guess within the next half a year, a lot of people would have upgraded to 7.5. Or maybe it's just in the process of planning it. And we still got 100, whatever, on the older systems, really old systems. And it's, I don't know how much is this, like maybe 50% on a 7.5 release. So that's pretty good compared to the number of results and how long time it's been. Well, I guess it has been on the market for quite some time. So yeah, but you can check the full survey out, a full summary and some other responses on these things, and see how you scale up to it. And there'll be some more results coming out later in November. So I think one of the important things that SAP was announcing was the iPaaS at Teched. So the Cloud Integration Suite, I think, is the product. It's like they've just taken all the different cloud application products and put some duct tape around it and said we now got a bundle of products. So it's not really one SKU at the moment, but it is a list of different products that you can buy with the different components. So I think it makes a lot of sense that you can just take the things that matters to your organization instead of having to buy all the different components. That you just get the 3 components that make sense in your organization. So I think you got the cloud, cloud enterprise, cloud integration enterprise edition, which is the big CPI tenant that contains many of the products. And I think for some of them, for instance, it contains the API management with 5 million API calls. And then we can say, okay, if I'm going over there, you would just pay for those extra API calls. And you want to use the cloud credit, so you can just buy the services that you want without having to go through a procurement process, but just say, okay, now I have a pattern where I need enterprise messaging, and then you can use those tools. And I'm not really sure on how it would work, those cloud credits, but I would imagine that you just go to your account rep and say, I want to buy for 100,000 euros a year cloud credits, and then you'll get some kind of a discount, but not sure. But it's like 8 or 10 different products, maybe more, obviously depending on how you see it. And I'll just cover, so based on this, I think this one actually relate a lot to your ISAM methodology about what you want to do. But so I had it earlier in the beginning of the presentation, but I moved it here because I think it makes more sense here, because obviously, most likely you have a PI system and are using that one for all your development. And you're probably an SAP shop, otherwise you most likely will not use PI. But the thing about it is, considering what you should be doing, and I think it makes sense to have an SAP first strategy, because it means that you just have one place to shop, transport, monitor, and manage. And obviously there's some difference between how all of the different tools are working at the moment. SAP is trying to make sure that they work a little differently and integrate more seamlessly and make it easier for you to run these things. But yeah, you have one vendor, you just need to go through one list of tools, and you can obviously see, does this match my requirement? And if not, you would have to figure out where else you want to shop. But I think in the beginning, it makes a lot of sense just to have, see what they're offering. Does it match what you want? And then based on that, figure out what else do we want. And you can also say some of these is fairly cheap to get started with. For instance, the API management is 150 euros a month. And then you can try it out and see how it works. And if it doesn't, you can go for some of the other ones. And some even have free trials that you can just figure out how they work. Obviously, there's some downsides of it. You may get a cheaper price or features at the vendor directly. ABG have some different features that SAP doesn't have, as on some conversation, and they would probably be able to fix some of the issues a little faster than SAP could. And then, if it's a new tool, you anyway need to figure out where you're getting it. So, I think one of the cool thing I was trying to get access to was the integration content advisor. The only challenge with this tool, it's only available in the cloud integration enterprise edition. So if you have that one, you get access to this tool. And what this tool will give you is an ability to use machine learning, cloud crowdsourcing to create your B2B mapping. So you would create a schema or a document, and you would then, for instance, an EDI document, you say you have call that, a document. Then you set up what are the business, what type of business, what country, what industry, and then based on that, it will give you a guideline that says with 80% confidence, you need to fill in this information. And then you would also create the source schema or target schema in the same way, and then it will figure out, okay, I got 92% chance that the product number in this one is the product number in this one. And then from there, you can then create an extra, or you can say, okay, we got these things, and then once you're looking at the document and seeing what's really happening, you can then enhance it further and do your own mapping in this. So you can specify, I think it was XSLT functions you could put in to do some specific mapping that you want to do in it. And then once you press generate, it will generate 3 XSLTs, one that takes from the source side to somewhat intermediate format, where if you have specified that the different partner numbers in your, for instance, in the DFAC segment, if you have in the partner segment have different partners like sold to and build to, it would then extract these elements into a separate XML structure. And because of that, it's a lot easier to do the mapping between the different structures, because you say you don't need to specify the qualifier and say I want to look at this data if the qualifier is equal to this. So I think that is really a cool way of doing mappings, and not something you probably would be able to do in a PI because it requires a lot of extra work. But here in the XSLT and this auto-generated tool, it makes a lot of sense. We have the open connectors that was just released just before SAP Teched. And the thing I like about this, it's a harmonized way of doing integration. So if you're doing, for instance, doing uploads to a CRM system, you can create a generic partner that just is called, or contact or whatever it is. And then no matter which contact you're sending, or if you're sending it to Salesforce or to your Sugar CRM, you just say, I got a contact, and then the open connectors would then figure out, based on some rules, which of the CM systems it should be delivered to. So you can set up a lot of rules that map the structure and deliver it to these things. So it's pretty easy it takes a little time to figure out how you use it. Once you're getting to use it, it's pretty easy to do these, at least the ones they have delivered the adapters to, so like 150 different applications, and you can do extra modifications on some of these fields because everybody has their custom fields for these things. You can base, and it's priced at €1,000 a month for this. So Malcolm just had a question about the tag in the message. So in the message, you would just specify, if you have any special requirements, that this is the AG field that we're looking for, and AG is then mapped to order giver or whatever it is. And some of this is also pre-delivered. Then we got the API and open connectors. Obviously, that was also one of the things that was quite a lot of information about. So how do you make an API strategy? What's all about that? And there's the API hub where you can see all the different events that are going on. all the different APIs, and you would also be able to see events in this one. So that was one of the new things that they added. So from all applications you can create, all cloud applications, you can create events that says when purchase order is created, send an event, and then you can use the enterprise messaging and then subscribe to these events. So the CPI or whatever system would then see, hey, we have created a new event, a new purchase order, and then you can do specific handling on this. So they also released a functions as a service that allow you to listen to these events when the purchase order is created. You can do different events based on that, or you can use it in CPI for this. And in this open API hub, you also got some of the integration content for CPI and API management. One of the things that I was not really sure about what was going on in was the cloud workflow. And I had a hands-on on this one, and I actually think this is a pretty cool tool to do a lot of your development in. So it's BPM just like you have in the PO system. And there's 3 ways, as I recall it, to do user tasking. One would be to create themselves using web UI and the Swing client. It had some templates that you could use to build up the flow, but in general you needed to figure out where you're putting all of the content yourself, either the OData or the REST data. So there's a lot of coding involved in this. And then they had a forms section where you could fairly simple, just with a few clicks, create this, and then you'd be able, or say only one level form, so you could only have like header information, and there you could just specify on this field I want this specific value. So that one was fairly simple to start using. I think we created one in a few minutes, just understanding what it was. So if you want to create any specific coding, you would create some JavaScript in it. So I guess that is some language that you need to understand how you actually do. But I think in many cases, you don't need to do that, and you can just use it with the generic flow. It does require the portal, web IDE, and then the workflow service to run this thing. And I would imagine that this is also one of the products in the integration suite. So one of the other things was the master data service, and so the one of the big pain points with integration is you want to synchronize master data across your landscape. You want to ensure that once you got data in all, so if you create a new employee in your SuccessFactors application, that employee needs to be available in all other systems without having to create development on this. So the initial goal is that they would just use the data hub where there was some online capabilities in. So you could actually say, we got an employee master record here in the SuccessFactors system, and then all other systems could subscribe to that and possibly add some extra fields, because in Ariba they needed some extra fields about the employee that you only got there. But name, email address, and stuff like that would be owned by the SuccessFactors system. And some of it may be in real time, others may be near real time, where it would actually just synchronize the data, but depending on the requirements. I would imagine that we would just see this first just internally in the SAP systems between the cloud applications, and then later it would be something that you as a customer can start using. Cool. Good. So that was a little about the big changes as I see it. from the event. I think one of the other things that we have out there that's going on and is the operations, because a lot of people have to figure out what they want to do with all the things going on, and there's, as you saw, a lot of different integrations going on. There's a lot of different patterns, and you need to figure out which of them do you want to use, and what do you have of tools for this. So I think DevOps in some format, obviously there's many ways to call this, but the general thing is some way of doing continuous integration that allow you to actually understand who has developed what has been deployed, so you can speed up development and ensure that whenever someone is doing any development, it doesn't affect anything else, so you won't get bogged down by all of these different things. Some people were naming the SAFe, the scaled agile framework methodology as a way to go to be agile, and others saying, well, if you were already agile, then you may not use the SAFe. But it was some kind of a compromise about these things, and I think that makes a lot of sense, because you cannot have freeze period for months of the time where nothing will go on. You probably want to have a little more test-driven development, where you're actually being able to test the things that are going on. I'm not really sure on how this will work, because I think a lot of integration there, you actually on the fly figure out what you actually need to do on these things. Definitely regression testing would be something that you want to figure out how this actually ties together, so no one else is making changes to what's going on. Yeah, both in the PI and also in the rest of the SAP world. Another area is the support, as we talked about. Integration is increasingly important, and you want to figure out how do we actually identify some of these problems at a lot faster rate, and share the knowledge, and based on that be able to improve the service. Because a lot of times when I've seen an incident, it would be the same incident that repeats again and again, and instead of having to use developer resources on it, you can use an automating process for this, and I can share some of what we have done in that space to make it a little easier. But we just give you, at least for PI and CPI, give you a way to classify incidents, and based on that, some automated responses that you can do in those cases. I have also seen a lot of documentation going on, and obviously if you want to increase the scope of what you're doing and what's going on, it's becoming increasingly important to document, but also so people at a later stage would be able to figure out what's actually going on, why did we do these things, and what was the reason behind it. So you want to be able to create a document, but they should not be a large burden to developers. So you don't want to just create documents just for the sake of the document, but automate the process. One of the other things, and I think this ties a lot into these same things, is when I've been looking around at the user group at SAP Teched in the integration sessions, I don't see that many new people in this space. Yeah, 40 plus. I'm 39, almost 40. At least that is the case here in Europe and the US. I know that a lot of companies would outsource to Asia, where the age is a lot less. But one of the challenges with this outsourcing is how do you I think that the key thing is to be able to understand the architecture, or if you want to understand the architecture, you also need to be able to understand, at least to some degree, the underlying structures about what they're going on. So there's some kind of a mix-up between these two things that obviously for some integration, it makes sense that you can outsource them because they are, trivial. But others where it's more crucial, there it makes sense that you have it in-house, or that it makes sense for that. So you want to understand what you can do to get the developers you have to be more productive and understand their workings. So just of curiosity, who here on the webinar is below 35? Just wanted to hear a little about. Okay, so we got. Nice. Okay, good. But I'm at least not seeing any fresh graduates. Yeah. So to some extent, I think I'm right. Yeah. So I think one tool that would be a good thing to consider in this tool is the Figaf ERT tool. It's a tool that actually supports your full development life cycle. So you can do the all from documentation of what you have done of interfaces, all the testing. You can do all testing of the PI in just a simple way, and then you can validate once you're doing transport on your QA system that you have transported all the things, that all your adapter modules and everything works as it's supposedly. And then once you've done that, you can also do a lot of supporting in it, so you have a lot easier way of handling these things. We support both cloud platform integration and PO development. Klaus, I know you're that young. Yes, so you can check it out at figaf.com/ERT. And a fairly simple tool to get used to. There's free trials that allow you to get started. Next week, I'm having a session. Could you put the link in? Where I will share a little about how you can actually use this tool and what it would do for your organization. And if you want, we can also do a private demo. Yeah, and I guess, Ray, that's also one of the things that we see. There's not that many women on this call, at least from what I look at the names. But I strongly encourage you to join this webinar next week to see what we can do and if that would help in your organization with what you're doing with testing, automating the development flow of what's going on. So that was all I wanted to share with you. Are there any questions or something like that you want some information about? Then put that into the chat. Like to hear it. Otherwise, I almost made it to my goal of doing it in 40 minutes, but that was a lot of slides. I hope it made a lot of sense and you got some value from this to get my take on it. And obviously, it's not the official thing, and SAP would probably have some different recommendations, but this is a way to go for it. Yes, I will share the presentation and I'll share the recording of this so you can get those information also. And the link for registration for next week, you can get it just above where Taus has written. So thanks for joining.